Desire to worship God in spirit and in truth, to give Him all the glory and all the praise, and to thank Him for all that He has done in our lives. What a blessing it is this morning to be able to go back to the cross and remember the sacrifice of our Savior there. To be able to partake of His body, the bread that represents His body, and the fruit of the vine that represents His blood that was shed for us. And to be able to give back to Him who has so richly given to us all things. As Christians, we're still involved in a great conflict, in a great battle that's being waged. Even today, we're fighting a battle, aren't we? And the Bible tells us that it's not a battle against flesh and blood. We're not fighting human beings. What we're fighting is truth against error. Right against wrong. We're fighting against the forces of evil that's on one hand, and on the other hand, you have the army of righteousness that's under the banner of our great King, our Commander-in-Chief, Jesus Christ. And that side is on the other hand. Friends, this is a battle for the souls of people. It's a battle for the souls of men and women and boys and girls all across the world. Satan is seeking to destroy the soul. But God wants to save the soul. And God sent His Son into the world so that all mankind could be saved through Jesus Christ. You and I are part of that save. We're part of the army of God, and we're fighting along side by side with the Lord to win back those that Satan has taken captive into sin. And sometimes we might lose one here or there on our side. And we'll do all that we can to try to bring them back, to win that soul back to the Lord's side. But Satan is doing all that he can to destroy the souls of Christians. You see, he's already got the world. Satan has the world in his pocket. He's just trying to take those that belong to God and pull them away from Him and lead them astray all the way to the gates of hell. The Apostle Paul referred to this battle as the good fight of faith. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 12. It is a fight. It's a battle. And it has to be fought until that battle is won. We've got to keep on fighting. We can't give up. We can't surrender. We can't lay down. We've got to keep going. And so we have to be strong and brave and courageous. Now, this battle goes back all the way to the very beginning of time. In fact, all the way back to the Garden of Eden. You remember the first two that fought the devil? It was Adam and Eve. When Satan came into the garden to tempt them, to lead them away from God, to cause them to sin against God and disobey what God had commanded them, Satan won them for a time, didn't he? He sure did. And I think about Moses, the lawgiver. About 1,500 years before Christ, Moses asked Israel the question, who is on the Lord's side? From Exodus chapter 32 and verse 26. You know, that conflict continued. In fact, it continued all into the New Testament times. As a matter of fact, that conflict is still being waged even today. The battle is still going on, even in our day and time. And not only did Israel have to make a decision, we know as well that today, as Christians, we too must also make a decision as to whose side we're going to be on. Will we be on the side of right, or will we be on the side of wrong? Will we stand up for truth, or will we give in to error, to evil and wickedness? Will we be on the side of righteousness, on the Lord's side? Or will we be on the side of the devil? And so we must also make the decision. But you know, at times it seems as though that evil is prevailing. It seems like Satan is winning. We see so many signs and indicators of this each and every day. We see the advancement of wickedness in our world, in our society. But let me tell you, folks, ultimately, the battle has already been won. We know who the ultimate winner will be. The victor is Christ. God wins because Satan himself and all of his demonic forces will be cast eternally into the lake of fire and brimstone. Matthew chapter 25 and verse 41, and Revelation chapter 20 and verse 10. And how do we know that the victory's been won? Because our Lord will be hailed and proclaimed and with great joy and jubilation that he is the King of kings and he's the Lord of lords, according to Revelation 19 and verse 16. And so this morning, let's conclude our series on the battle belongs to the Lord with this lesson I've entitled, Lift High the Royal Banner. Lift high the royal banner. Let's turn to Isaiah, the prophet of Isaiah in the Old Testament, chapter 13, beginning at verse 2. I want you to notice what Isaiah wrote long ago. He says, Lift up a banner upon the high mountain. Exalt the voice unto them. Shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones for my anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like of a great people. A tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. Oh, Isaiah says there's a battle that will be fought. And the people will come together. They'll make a great noise as a mighty tumultuous sound. And they'll lift up high up on the mountain the banner. Who's the banner? What's the banner? Well, we could say that the banner is Christ. Jesus is the banner. The cross is the banner. The gospel is the banner. And we need to lift them up high. And so the first point this morning that I want to emphasize in this lesson is we as God's people must lift up the banner. In 1 Samuel chapter 7 and verse 12, we read about Samuel the prophet as he erected a stone, a memorial stone, a monument, if you will, to the victory that God had given Israel over the Philistines. You see, in that battle, the Philistines were winning. And Israel was being defeated. And it was suggested that they go and they bring the Ark of the Covenant, and they brought the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield. And with that great encouragement of the sign of God's presence among his people, the tide began to turn. And Israel began to prevail against the Philistines, and Israel won that day. And so Samuel erects this stone, and that stone is called the Ebenezer. That means it's a stone of help. The Lord has helped us. Well, just like Samuel there, we too must lift up a banner. And we must lift it up high. You remember the War of 1812? You remember not because you were there, but you remember because you've studied it in history. As the War of 1812 was lingering on 2 years, Washington had been sacked, the Capitol had been burned, even the White House. And now the British had moved to the great city of Baltimore in the Chesapeake Bay, and there the Baltimore Harbor was a fort, and it was Fort McHenry. The date was August the 13th, 1814. And the British Navy, that fleet, had sailed into the harbor, and they began a bombardment that lasted all through the night. There was a lawyer as well as a poet that was aboard one of the ships, and he watched the attack on Fort McKinley. And he wrote down things like proudly hailed, gallantly streaming, bombs bursting in air, gave proof, still there. You see, what he was writing was about the U.S. flag. We know this poem better today as the Star-Spangled Banner. You see, all through the night as that fort was being attacked and those bombs were casting down upon that fort and trying to take down that flag and to have a great victory for England, the soldiers were brave. They fought on through the night, and the flag, in dawn's early morning light, could still be seen. The colors were still waving in the breeze, and the flag was still there. They had lifted high the banner for the United States, for those colonies who ultimately won the war of freedom, the Revolutionary War. Let's go 100 years later. In 1863, the date is July the 18th, it's Fort Wagner on South Carolina's seacoast. It is a Confederate fort, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, a regiment that was filled with colored soldiers. And they climbed up the sandy beach and that embankment. And maybe even though they didn't win or take over the fort, they still put on a valiant fight through the night. There was a man by the name of Sergeant William H. Carney who had picked out the colors. The color guard who was carrying the banner had been shot, and Carney grabbed hold of it and he waved the flag on. He rallied the troops. He kept going all through the night. He was honored by the United States. He said, "I did my duty. I never let the flag touch the ground." Lift high the royal banner. Just as those brave Americans so long ago inspired us with their bravery and their courage and their honor, as Christians, we need to make sure that our colors never fall, that our loyalty to Christ never falters, that our allegiance to Him remains steadfast and true, and that we fight on till the end. And we let that banner, the banner of the cross, wave gallantly for all the world to see. Let me tell you, folks, if the colors ever fall, then the troops will become discouraged. If they see the banner falter, they see it fall to the ground, they may become so discouraged that they think they cannot win the battle. And so we must be moved by the colors. We must be moved by that banner. Just as you and I are inspired and we're encouraged when we see that beautiful flag with those 50 white stars on that field of blue and those 13 stripes of red and white, don't they inspire you? Whenever you see the flag of our nation, how beautiful it is, and may she ever wave freely over this land. But there's a more important banner. Even more important than the U.S. flag. It's the banner of Christ. Lift high the royal banner of Jesus Christ. I want you to look at Isaiah chapter 11, verse 12, because Isaiah tells us who the banner is. Isaiah will speak about a banner, and he speaks about an ensign, and he speaks about a standard. And he tells us what that standard is. He shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Verse 12. In Isaiah 62:10, he says, go through the gates, prepare ye the way of the people, cast up the highway, gather up the stones, lift up a standard for the people. And then in Isaiah 11, verse 10, in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, from the family of Jesse, the father of David, who is the ancestor of Jesus. There would be a standard, an ensign that was lifted up from the root of Jesse, an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. In Psalm 60, verse 4, we read, thou hast given a banner to them that fear thee, that it may be displayed because of the truth. The banner of the truth may she ever wave, the banner of righteousness, the banner of God's word. Lift up the banner. It's the standard by which we live. We follow and we imitate that example of Jesus Christ, our ensign, our banner. Lift high the gospel of Jesus Christ. Why do we need to lift up the banner? Because sometimes those who have been entrusted to carry that banner, they might faint. They might grow weary. They might become tired at that work. Isaiah talks about that. Isaiah 13 verse 7, he says, therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. What causes that? Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's discouragement, sometimes it's anxiety, or just plain old being tired. Being tired. And maybe we feel like giving up. And sometimes we can become discouraged at that at times. We grow weary. How many of you remember the words of the song that was written back in the 1930s by Thomas Dorsey, made popular by Mahalia Jackson and Elvis Presley? Well, I'm tired and so weary, but I must go along till the Lord calls me away. You hear me saying? We're in the fight. We're fighting hard against the enemy. But sometimes we're tired, and sometimes we've grown weary. We're battle fatigued. We're almost worn out. But we've got to keep fighting until the Lord comes. Until the Lord calls us home. Brave soldiers of the cross, fight on. Fight on, soldiers of the cross. Stand firm for righteousness' sake. Stand firm for truth. Stand tall for the Lord. And fight the battle. Jesus himself said in Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10, he says, you're going to suffer tribulation, but be thou faithful unto death, and I'll give you the crown of life. I want you to think about that promise, what the Lord is promising there. That if we will fight on and be faithful to the cause, be dedicated to Him, and durable. You see, that's what good soldiers are. They're dedicated. They're durable. And they fight to the end. They don't give up. They don't give in. They don't surrender. They don't lay down their arms. They fight until the battle's won. Until the victory is ours. Fight on, soldier. Be faithful, Jesus said, unto death, and so we must fight unto the end. And I don't know how long that battle will take. I don't know how long the conflict will wage. But let me tell you this. We've got to persevere. It takes perseverance to win the war. It takes perseverance. But what does that mean? It means we endure. The Apostle Paul, writing to Timothy, says in 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 3, endure hardships as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. You know, sometimes there's soldiers Maybe they haven't been trained well. Maybe they haven't really been battle tested. But when the hardships come, sometimes some of those soldiers will flee. They'll run from the face of battle. They'll go AWOL, away without leave. They can't be found. And if they're found, they'll be prosecuted. And sometimes we as Christians do the same thing. We're not willing to endure the hardship. We're not willing to stay in the fight. We become tired. We're weary. Maybe even afraid a little bit. Somewhat discouraged. Maybe in the face of danger. Seeing the enemy approaching. We're afraid of Satan. But the Bible tells us that if we resist him, then he will flee from us. You see, Satan's just a big old coward. And if you put up any kind of resistance at all, James says, James 4 verse 8, that he will flee from you. He'll turn coat and run. But sometimes people don't think that way. They don't remember that. And they're afraid of him. They're afraid of the enemy. Jesus tells us again in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 22. He says, you're going to be hated for my name's sake. But he that endures to the end. He that endures to the end shall be saved. How do we win the war? We persevere. We endure as good soldiers. We're dedicated to Christ. We're durable. We don't wear out. We don't give in. We keep on going. And we go till the battle's won. The song is sung. Stand up. Stand up for Jesus. Ye soldiers of the cross, lift high his royal banner. It must not suffer lost. From victory unto victory, his arm shall he lead, till every foe is vanquished, and Christ is Lord indeed. I want to ask you, my friend, is Christ the Lord of your life today? Have you confessed Jesus to be the Lord of your life? Have you bowed the knee before him in confession to his name, the holy name, the sweetest name on mortal tongue? Jesus, blessed Jesus. Have you bowed down before him in obedience? Trusting him to be your Savior. He gave his life for you. He shed his blood on Calvary's hill. He gave his all. Will you give your life in service to him as a dedicated, brave, true soldier of Jesus Christ? Don't grow weary, my friends. Don't give up and lay down your arms and run from the enemy. Remain true, steadfast, dedicated, loyal, faithful, and you will receive the crown of life. If you're here this morning and you haven't been washed in the blood of the Lamb, would you confess your faith that Jesus Christ is the Son of God? And would you be buried with him in that watery grave of baptism for the remission of your sins, allowing him to add you to his church, the body of the saved? And then from that point on, be the true soldier that Christ has called you to be. Maybe you've wandered away. Maybe you departed from the battlefield. Maybe you've sat down your arms. Lift them up. Lift up the banner. Be faithful. Serve him unto death. And he will give you that crown of life. Friend, if you're here this morning, you need to come to him. Won't you obey him while together we stand and sing? Yeah.